Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Allow me just to take a brief moment to introduce me. I'm a homiletician. That means I'm a preacher. Number two, I'm a pediatric chaplain. I've been blessed to do it for 16 years, and I love what I get to do. I am blessed to be married to the greatest woman in the world for 32 years, and I still love her, and she's still cool with me. But one of the things you may not appreciate, and I'll tell you why in a moment, I'm an introvert by nature. But when you get me to talking about things that I'm deeply passionate about, you can't get me to shut up. So Melissa, you got a large job. Allow me to introduce this discussion with you. If you're anywhere near my age, you may recognize this. In the words of a broken heart, it's just emotion that's taking me over. Tied up in sorrow, lost in my soul. But if you don't come back, come home to me, doctor. You understand the song. If you're old enough, you remember the Bee Gees. I believe that the essence of what we do in palliative care, what we do in spirituality is tending to the broken heart. Al Green said it well. How can we mend a broken heart? Y'all know the song, right? Well, I hope to share how do we bring this thing to life? How do we get this thing out of the ethereal and make it very, very, very real? This is stuff I hope you get. One of the things I'm grateful to Emily about is that you have all of this in your purview, and so I will not be married to this presentation. I will touch on it, but I just want to share my heart with you, because this is a heart thing. You didn't say amen. You got to help a Baptist preacher out, all right? This is a heart thing. It is moved by what drives us at the core of our being. And if the core of our being is not engaged in this work, we will not move forward. My challenge to you today is do not over-intellectualize what the human spirit cannot be comprehended to do. We have got to challenge ourselves. Do not retreat into coming up with another tool. I'm impressed with the reality that we are teaching and building a lot of great brand new hammers. But my challenge is we've got to build better carpenters. And how do we build better carpenters? We build better carpenters by dealing with this thing called the continuum of care and dealing with the hearts of people. Well, most of you have seen this in different iterations already. But there's one thing that has been missing out of every one of these slides I've seen thus far. It's right here. How do I do this thing? Oh, don't worry about it. I'll do it myself. You see that line over to the far left? It's called their life. And as much as we talk about palliative care, we talk about it intersecting when the person is in crisis, the person is sick. But I got news for you. They had a life before they got sick. And part of that life is their journey and how they find meaning in their life. I heard someone, I'm terrible with names, but I remember the story that was told about the Latino brother who was in dire distress, and no one understood him. And when he would just repeat it, mi hijo, somebody understood, and they got his kid home to him to talk to him about the burdens of his soul. And guess what? He was at peace to die. That's what we get to do, y'all. We get to tend to the hearts of people. That's the part that matters. The synthesis of humanity. I did that one myself. I think it's pretty cool. Medical care, we do that body part pretty good. Okay? You come in with a broken ankle, we know what to do with it. You come in with a tumor, we know what to do with it. That's pretty cool, right? Academicians, we deal with that mind thing. We can talk about the facts, right? We can talk about how you got it, what can we do to fix it, and all of that good stuff. But the part that most of us don't attend to is the spirit. And I define spirit as the repository of meaning making. It is that thing that when nobody else can talk to us, I find meaning in the way my life comes together. I find it in my responsibility and my privilege as a pediatric chaplain to help us deal with the meaning making. How do we discern? How do we understand this thing called life? Now, wait a minute. The reality is all of these things are shaped by who we are. And here's where I got to my statement about making better carpenters. I'm also trained as a psychotherapist. And in my own training as a psychotherapist, one of the things we were encountered and demanded to do was develop a keen sense of introspection. Look at your stuff, Freeman. Check out what's going on in your life, Freeman. But I suggest, I heard one pose a question to the Arnold panel. If I were the king of the universe for a day, I would stand like King did down on that plaza in 1963, and I would simply say, I have a dream. I have a dream that one day every clinician will go into therapy for real to understand what drives them to do what they do. And when they come to terms with that, they are no longer working it and exercising it in the context of a caregiver. If I understand what is bothering me, let me give you a story. I shared this at lunch. She isn't holding up any paper yet, so I'm good. I shared this at lunch. I had a patient come to our hospital of the Jewish tradition. I'm a Christian. I did my Walmart routine. Now, you don't know what my Walmart routine is, but let me share you. I kind of go around and let people know I exist. Hi, I'm Richard Freeman. I'm the manager of the Pastoral Care Department at Children's. Just want to let you know we're here. My job and my privilege is to take care of your heart. Cool, bye. I'm on my way. Sometimes I walk into long conversations, but a lot of times it's a short. Well, this particular day, it was a short one. Later that day, I got a phone call from the nurse. She said, Pastor Freeman, this mom wants a psychologist, but I think you can help her. I said, I'll give it a shot. She had sequestered herself. She's crying profusely. She looked over her shoulder. She saw this 6'5", 250-pound black guy walk in the room. And she says, I asked for a psychologist, but I guess you will do. And she abruptly stopped crying. She said, but let me tell you something. I don't believe in Jesus Christ. I don't believe he's the Son of God. I don't believe he's the Messiah. I said, well, I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe he's the Son of the God. I believe he's the Messiah. Now, can't we talk? And she did that. She laughed because she understood my journey and was not to convert her. My journey was just to be with her. And for the remaining week and a half, she was in my hospital before we sent her son home to die. She'd call me every day and say, Pastor Freeman, you got a few minutes for an old Jewish lady? And I'd say, absolutely, right? That's a spiritual part we're talking about. Now, here's the part that I'm going to get a little bit more challenging with us. I'm going to argue that not doing spiritual care well borders on and may be indeed unethical. These are the tenets of major tenets of ethics, right? Autonomy, right? If you don't know my spiritual journey, how can you say you allow me to work autonomously? Just a thought. Non-maleficence. If you don't know what vexes my spirit when you're offering me certain medical treatment that's going to prolong my life but is never going to improve my lot, and you're telling me I can't go be with my God, you might be doing something that is maleficent. Beneficence. If you don't know what drives me, what are my motivators, you may actually be keeping me from the very thing that gives meaning to my life. Just a thought. How to do it. Informed consent is governing principle of patient interaction. Although often implied, there's another principle operative in medical delivery, and I call it informed treatment. Informed treatment means that I get what I'm desiring. Spirituality must be considered when determining how medical services are dispensed. I got 5 minutes and I'm going to be good with it. How do I get there? Let me offer a few things. I'm going to move kind of quickly. Oh, that faded better than I thought it would. Let me back up. Okay. I'm talking about building a better carpenter. You got to know your hot buttons, right? If I had walked into that room all messed up, not sure about what I believe from a faith tradition, that when I walked in that mother's room, I'd have went, really? Oh my God, what do I do? No, I'm comfortable with the skin I'm in. And my hope and prayer is that you are comfortable in the skin you're in. And when you are comfortable, it gives you the capacity to be present with all peoples. Part of my mantra at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh is I minister from agnostic to Wiccan and everything in between. Why? It ain't my journey. It's your journey. And you give me the awesome privilege to be with you in the most difficult moment of your life. What a privilege. Recognize also, you're a learner. And I know how that sounds to those who are medically bent. I've got my degree. I don't have to learn anymore. Great, no more exams. But you are a learner. You're a perpetual learner. Allow the patients and their families to teach you as well. Understand your value system. There's a word we've used today that I'm going to challenge because there's a different iteration of the word. There's value and there are values. We talk about value because that's a quantitative approach, but I suggest that we should also look at values, which are qualitative. What gives real meaning to life? You know what? I could have a checkbook with $3.5 million in it. I wish I did, but I don't. But if I had it in my purse, in my wallet, you know what? That means I can buy some stuff. But the qualitative measure of my life is not what I can buy. The qualitative measure of my life is the woman I love, the children that we raise, the grandchild that I have, that I absolutely will kill anybody that messes with him. Amen. That's my grandchild. All right? That's the qualitative values of my life. And we need to touch into those qualitative values. Caregiving for the dying is a deeply spiritual journey requiring spiritual integrity. I will step on the gas. All right, hot buttons. You can read that later. Learning while doing. I talked about that. You can read that later. Values, doorway to the spiritual. Be acquainted with your non-negotiables. You and I need to know those things that I just cannot separate myself from. And if you know them and you find them in the context of caregiver, do what every good clinician does when they are vexed. They recuse themselves from a case, invite another colleague in, and say, hey, I can't handle this one. That's okay. You know, that makes you a good caregiver, right? All right? Distinguish those values that are your essence from those that are important. That's a different way of saying that top statement. You and I have got to know what really is important. That stuff that gives it all right here in my gut. I may not get to the important stuff. There's some things that are important to me, but you know what? We can differ on what's important, but I can't differ on what is my essence. Insight leads us to discerning what those things are. Safeguard those values that esteem you as your essence. Last part, and then I'll shut up. Spiritual integrity. I lifted that up. My working definition is the ability to differentiate your values from those of a client without a compulsion to reshape the spiritual beliefs of the client. The ability to be me without having to go in and say, well, you know what, you just ain't all right. No, you got to believe it this way, otherwise everything's all passed up. Get out of here. My job, my privilege is to walk into every room with a heightened sense of spiritual integrity. I know who I am. I want to get to know who you are and find out what works for you. How does one nurture their spiritual integrity? Search for answers to the questions that vex your spirit. Did you catch that? I didn't say search for the answers that help the client. Spiritual integrity says search for the answers that give meaning to you. And once you have gotten those answers, find peace with it and then leave it alone. It is not to be dealt with in the context of a caregiver. It's not to be bombarding someone else with, I'm trying to figure this thing out. I'm the existential. No. Find peace here. And when you find peace here, it allows you to do the job of within spiritual integrity. Why is it important to nurture spiritual integrity? When our issues are not the client's issues, we are more empathetic in our approach. When you're not beating up somebody else trying to figure out your stuff, you can be present. You can be there. You can hear somebody say something totally antithetical to your belief and not go, oh my God, they just said that. No, you can be there. Because everyone doesn't believe everything I believe. And I don't believe everything everybody else believes. But I got good news for you. I can be there when their heart is breaking. I can find out that thing that gives meaning to their life and encourage them in it. And if I do that well, I've been a blessing and I have been blessed. Is this the same as religious training? Absolutely, positively not. Right? You don't have to be religiously trained to pull this off. You've got to learn it from in here. Because not everybody is religious. The last survey I've seen is about closing in on about 6% of Americans are no longer identified as religious. About 85% identify as spiritual. All right? There's at least a 25% disconnect right there between what we do, right? So we've got to deal with spiritual issues with spiritual integrity. What must I do when my spiritual essence is seriously threatened? I already said that one. All right. Here's how, last thing I'll say. This is how you do it. You start by being curious. All right? Look around you. Go ahead, look around you. What do you have in common with every person you see? The word is humanity. It's humanity. We are all human. Get curious about each other's humanity. All right? Before long, Robert and I are going to sit down and have a conversation, get to know Robert a little better, because he's another human being, right? I need to know what Robert's about. Why? He's an interesting fellow, all right? And I can say that without ever having a deep conversation with him. Why? Because we all have interesting stories, right? Be curious enough to ask some interesting questions about people, all right? And then you got to be courageous. Courageous. This ain't easy stuff. Sometimes you're going to have to ask somebody, what is their spiritual journey and what kind of meaning does that make for you? Is that an easy question? It's not. But it's a necessary question. It's a question that if we ask it, we affirm that individual's humanity. And if we affirm their humanity, we have been good caregivers. Cultivate an attentive presence. Be there. Learn to shut your beeper off. Learn to shut your cell phone off. Be present, because each individual's humanity deserves the best you can give. Thank you much.